Velthar walked into Commander Nixara's office with his usual confidence. He had done this type of work many times before. The commander sat behind her metal desk reading from a glowing screen. Her purple skin looked darker under the blue lights of the ship. "Velthar," she said without looking up, "I have a new job for you." He stood straight and waited. The commander finally looked at him with her 4 black eyes. "There is a new planet the Council found. The beings there are called humans. They live on something called Earth." She touched the screen and images appeared in the air between them. "These humans seem to fight all the time. We need to know if they are dangerous." Velthar looked at the floating pictures. He saw creatures that looked weak and small. They had only 2 arms and 2 legs. Their skin was soft and came in different colors. Most strange of all, they had only 2 eyes. "They look very primitive," Velthar said. "What kind of weapons do they have?" Commander Nixara smiled. "That is what makes this easy work. They use metal projectiles and chemical explosives. Very old technology. They have not even learned to use energy weapons properly." Velthar felt pleased. This would be simple work. He had studied 17 other worlds before this one. Most primitive species were the same. They fought over territory, food, and mates. They killed each other for stupid reasons. The Council usually decided to avoid them or destroy them. "How long do I have?" he asked. "Take all the time you need. Set up a hidden observation post and watch them carefully. The Council wants to know everything about how they fight. Are they organized? Do they work together? Can they be a threat to us?" Velthar nodded. "Should I watch for anything special?" "Just the usual things. See if they are smart enough to be useful as workers. If not, we will recommend that the Council mark their world as forbidden. No contact." The commander turned back to her screen. Velthar understood this meant he should leave. He walked to his own small office and began preparing for the mission. 2 days later, his ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Earth. The planet looked blue and green, covered with water and what seemed like plant life. Velthar had seen many worlds, but this one looked unusually alive. He activated his ship's hiding systems and moved closer. The ship became invisible to most types of detection. He positioned himself where he could watch the planet's surface clearly. His first scans showed many different groups of humans living in various places. Some lived in huge cities with millions of individuals. Others lived in small groups in the countryside. Most interesting was that several groups seemed to be fighting. Velthar focused his attention on one conflict zone. His instruments showed 2 groups of humans using the primitive weapons Commander Nixara had described. They fired metal bullets at each other and used explosive devices. Just as expected, he said to himself. He watched one group of human soldiers moving through a destroyed city. Their leader appeared to be someone called Captain Taemin. The human was taller than most others and seemed to make decisions for the group. Velthar observed as Captain Taemin spoke to his soldiers. The alien could not understand their language yet, but his computer was learning quickly. Soon he would know what they were saying. The human soldiers moved carefully through the broken buildings. They checked corners and worked together in small teams. This surprised Velthar a little. Most primitive species he had watched fought in large, disorganized groups. A female human called Staff Sergeant Bora seemed to be Captain Taemin's second in command. She was smaller than the captain but moved with confidence. She gave orders to other soldiers and they listened to her. Velthar made notes in his report. These humans showed some organization but nothing impressive. They still used those weak projectile weapons. Then something happened that made him look more carefully. Another group of humans attacked Captain Taemin's soldiers. But instead of fighting back immediately, the captain's group did something strange. They moved to protect a building full of non-fighting humans, what the computer translated as civilians. Velthar leaned forward in his chair. This was unusual behavior. Most species fought to win territory or resources. They did not worry about non-combatants. Captain Taemin shouted orders to his soldiers. Half of them formed a line between the attacking humans and the building full of civilians. The other half helped move the non-fighters to safety. This made no sense to Velthar. The captain was giving up tactical advantage to protect humans who could not fight. It would be much easier to use the building as cover and let the civilians take care of themselves. But Captain Taemin's soldiers followed his orders without question. They put themselves in danger to protect others. The battle lasted for 2 hours. Velthar watched as both groups of humans fought with determination. But what confused him most was that Captain Taman's group seemed to be fighting to protect rather than to destroy. When the fighting ended, Captain Taman's soldiers had won. But instead of celebrating or taking prizes from their enemies, they immediately began helping wounded humans from both sides. Staff Sergeant Bora organized teams to give medical care to injured fighters, even the ones who had been attacking them minutes before. She treated enemies with the same care as her own soldiers. Belthar stared at his screens in confusion. This behavior made no logical sense. Why help someone who had just tried to kill you? He made more notes but found himself writing questions instead of facts. What were these humans really fighting about? Why did they seem to care more about protecting others than winning battles? As the day ended on the human planet, Belthar realized this assignment might not be as simple as he had thought. These creatures called humans were doing things he had never seen before. He decided to watch them more carefully. Perhaps there was something about their fighting that he did not understand yet. But still, they only had primitive weapons and soft bodies. How dangerous could they really be? Belthar settled in for a longer observation period. He thought he would understand these humans soon enough. After all, primitive species were always predictable in the end. He had no idea how wrong he was about to be. 3 weeks had passed since Belthar began watching the humans. Each day brought new confusion. These creatures were not behaving like any primitive species he had studied before. His translation computer had learned their language well enough now. He could understand most of what they said. This made their actions even more puzzling. Today, Captain Taman received orders to rescue civilians trapped in a dangerous area. The enemy had surrounded a hospital filled with sick humans and their doctors. Getting them out would be very difficult. Belthar watched as the captain studied maps with his officers. Staff Sergeant Bora pointed to different routes they could take. "The north path is too open," she said. "They will see us coming from far away." "The south route goes through the old factory district," Captain Taman replied. "Lots of places for enemies to hide." A younger soldier named Private Dong-Su stepped forward. "Sir, what if we create a diversion? Draw their attention away from the hospital?" Belthar expected the captain to ignore the young soldier. In most species, older and higher-ranking individuals made all decisions. But Captain Taman listened carefully. "What do you suggest?" the captain asked. "I could take a small team and make noise on the east side. Make them think we are attacking from there. While they focus on us, the main group rescues the people in the hospital." Staff Sergeant Bora shook her head. "Too dangerous. They would surround you quickly." But Private Dong-Su had thought about this. "We would not stay and fight. Hit them fast, then run to the extraction point. By the time they figure out what happened, everyone would be safe." Belthar studied the human's plan. It was actually quite clever. Use a small force to fool a larger one, but it would put Private Dong-Su and his team in terrible danger. Captain Taman looked at the maps again. "It could work, but I cannot order anyone to take that risk. I volunteer." "Sir?" Private Dong-Su said immediately. "So do I," said another soldier. "And me," said a third. Belthar watched in amazement as half the unit volunteered for the dangerous mission. They were willing to risk their lives to save people they had never met. This was completely illogical. The soldiers gained nothing by saving the civilians in the hospital. The sick humans could not fight or work. They were just extra mouths to feed in a war zone. But Captain Taman chose 4 soldiers to go with Private Dong-Su. The rest would rescue the civilians. "Remember," the captain told the diversion team, "your job is to make noise and stay alive. Do not try to be heroes." Private Dong-Su smiled. "We will see you at the extraction point, sir." The 2 teams separated and moved toward their targets. Belthar split his attention between them, watching both groups on different screens. Private Dong-Su's team reached the east side of the enemy position. They set up their weapons and waited for Captain Taman's signal. The main rescue team crept toward the hospital from the west. They moved slowly and carefully, staying hidden behind broken walls and abandoned vehicles. When Captain Taman reached the hospital, he sent the signal. Private Dong-Su's team immediately began firing at the enemy positions. The enemy soldiers did exactly what the humans had predicted. They turned their attention to the east, thinking a major attack was coming from that direction. This allowed Captain Taman's team to enter the hospital safely. They found 63 civilians inside, sick people, doctors, and nurses who had refused to abandon their patients. But getting them out would be the hard part. Meanwhile, Private Dongsu's team was in serious trouble. The enemy had realized it was a small diversion force and was moving to surround them. "Time to go," Private Dongsu shouted to his team. They began running toward the extraction point, but enemy soldiers were already moving to cut off their escape route. Velthar calculated the odds of their survival. Less than 12% chance. The logical thing would be for them to surrender, but humans apparently did not think logically. Instead of giving up, Private Dongsu led his team through the most dangerous path possible, straight through the center of the enemy position. They moved so fast and unexpectedly that the enemy soldiers could not react in time. The young human used abandoned buildings and broken vehicles as cover. When they reached a dead end, he found a way through a storm drain that his computer had missed. Meanwhile, Captain Taemin was leading 63 civilians out of the hospital. Many were too sick to walk quickly. Some had to be carried. This should have been impossible. Moving so many weak people through a combat zone was a tactical nightmare. But the humans made it work through pure determination and creativity. Staff Sergeant Bora organized the civilians into small groups. Soldiers stayed with each group to protect them. When enemy forces appeared, the soldiers fought just long enough for the civilians to get away. The most amazing part was how the sick humans helped each other. Patients who could barely walk supported those who were worse off. Doctors and nurses refused to leave until all their patients were safe. Velthar had never seen anything like it. These beings were risking everything for others, even strangers. Both teams reached the extraction point at almost the same time. Private Dongsu's diversion team arrived first, breathing hard but alive. Captain Taemin's group came next with all 63 civilians. Not a single person had been left behind. As they loaded the rescued people onto transport vehicles, Velthar heard Captain Taemin talking to Private Dongsu. "Good work today. That was smart thinking under pressure." "Thank you, sir, but I was just doing my job." "Your job does not require you to volunteer for suicide missions." Private Dongsu looked confused. "Sir, those people needed help. We could help them. What else matters?" Captain Taemin smiled and patted the young soldier's shoulder. "Nothing else, Private. Nothing else at all." Velthar sat back in his chair staring at the screens. He had watched the entire operation and still could not believe what he had seen. These humans had accomplished something that should have been impossible with their primitive technology. They had outthought a superior enemy force and saved dozens of lives without losing anyone. But more than that, they had done it because they thought it was right. Not for gain or advantage, but because other people needed help. Velthar looked at his report files. He had been writing down facts about human weapons and tactics, but he realized he was missing something much more important. These creatures had something his people had lost long ago, something that made them far more dangerous than any weapon. They had courage. 2 months into his observation, Velthar finally understood what was really happening on Earth. The discovery made his blood run cold. He had been watching the wrong enemy. While reviewing long-range sensor data, he noticed something that changed everything. The human soldiers were not fighting each other. They were fighting invaders from space. Velthar enhanced his scans and ran the data through his computer. The results shocked him. The creatures attacking humans were Mordak, a species his own people considered barely intelligent. The Mordak were useful as workers and servants, but the Keth Mori Empire had never thought them worth much attention. They were strong but slow, with simple technology and basic tactics. But here they were, invading Earth with weapons that looked familiar to Velthar. Very familiar. He ran deeper scans on the Mordak equipment. Energy rifles, hover tanks, shield generators. All of it was Keth Mori technology. His own people had armed Earth's invaders. Velthar felt sick. He had been sent to watch humans fight, thinking they were primitive savages battling each other. Instead, he had been watching a desperate species defend their home against a technologically superior enemy. An enemy his own. People had equipped and encouraged. He quickly accessed classified files through his security codes. What he found made things even worse. The Galactic Council knew about the Mordak invasion. They had planned it. Earth was rich in resources that the Council wanted. The plan was simple. Let the Mordak weaken human resistance, then move in for final conquest. Humans were not supposed to survive this long, but they had done more than survive. They had been winning Velthar. focused his sensors on a new battle taking place near what humans called the Pacific Ocean. Lieutenant Colonel Hyjin was leading a regiment against a major Mordak assault force. The aliens had superior numbers and technology. They flew in hover tanks that could move in any direction. Their energy weapons could punch through human armor easily. They had personal shields that could stop most human bullets. By all logic, the humans should be defeated quickly. Lieutenant Colonel Hyjin studied the enemy through her field glasses. She was planning something, but Velthar could not guess what. The humans were outnumbered 3-1, and their weapons were clearly inferior. "What are your orders, ma'am?" asked her second-in-command. "We cannot fight them head-on," she said. "So we will not fight them at all." This made no sense to Velthar. If they did not fight, they would lose. But Lieutenant Colonel Hyjin had a different plan. She split her regiment into small groups and spread them over a wide area. When the Mordak attacked, the humans seemed to retreat in panic. The alien invaders followed, thinking they had won an easy victory. Their hover tanks moved forward in a confident formation. That was when Lieutenant Colonel Hyjin sprung her trap. The humans had not been retreating. They had been leading the Mordak into a carefully planned ambush. Small teams of human soldiers were hidden all around the area, armed with weapons the aliens had not expected. Instead of trying to punch through Mordak shields with bullets, the humans used modified mining explosives. Instead of shooting at the hover tanks directly, they targeted the ground underneath them. When the explosives went off, the hover tanks lost their stable flight patterns. They crashed into each other and into the ground. The Mordak shields were designed to stop energy blasts and projectiles, not shockwaves traveling through solid Earth. But the most brilliant part of the plan was how Lieutenant Colonel Hyjin used the aliens' own technology against them. Human engineers had been studying captured Mordak equipment. They learned that the alien communications used a specific frequency, so they built jamming devices that blocked Mordak radios while leaving human communications clear. When the ambush began, the Mordak could not talk to each other. Their coordinated attack fell apart into confused chaos. The humans picked off isolated alien units one by one. Instead of one big battle, it became dozens of small fights where humans had the advantage. In 6 hours, Lieutenant Colonel Hyjin's regiment had destroyed an entire Mordak invasion force. They captured alien prisoners and seized advanced technology for study. Velthar watched the whole thing with growing amazement. The humans had not just won against superior technology, they had made it look easy. But what impressed him most was what happened after the battle. The humans treated their Mordak prisoners with care. They gave them medical attention and food. When some aliens were badly injured, human doctors worked just as hard to save them as they did for their own soldiers. This was completely against standard military practice. Most species killed prisoners or used them as slaves. Showing mercy to enemies was seen as weakness, but Lieutenant Colonel Hyjin explained her reasoning to her officers. "These Mordak soldiers are not our real enemies," she said. "Someone else sent them here. Someone else armed them and pointed them at our world. If we treat them well, maybe some will tell us who really wants us dead." She was right. Within days, some Mordak prisoners began sharing information. They talked about the Galactic Council and the plans for Earth's conquest. Velthar realized the humans were learning about threats they did not even know existed yet. They were preparing for battles that had not been fought. In another part of the world, he observed Major Inho leading his regiment against a Mordak command ship. The alien vessel was heavily armed and protected by energy shields. Attacking it directly would be suicide, so Major Inho did not attack it directly. Instead, his soldiers used construction equipment, bulldozers, cranes, and mining machines. They built a huge earthen ramp that led up to the ship's landing site. When the ramp was finished, they drove the construction machines up it, like tanks in an assault. The Mordak ship's weapons were designed to fight aircraft and military vehicles. They could not angle down far enough to hit bulldozers climbing a dirt hill. The humans crashed their construction equipment right into the command ship's hull. The impact damaged the alien vessel's engines and weapons. Then human soldiers poured out of the machines and boarded the enemy ship. They captured it in hand-to-hand fighting, using their primitive firearms against aliens who had never expected close combat. Major Inho personally led the assault team that took the ship's bridge. When the battle was over, humans had captured their first intact alien spacecraft. Velthar sat in his observation post, staring at the screens in disbelief. These humans were not primitive. They were brilliant. They took whatever tools they had and found ways to make them work. They turned weaknesses into strengths and disadvantages into opportunities. Most terrifying of all, they were learning. Every battle made them smarter and more dangerous. Velthar looked at his report files. He was supposed to be documenting human primitive behavior for the Council's invasion plans. Instead, he was watching the future conquerors of the galaxy take their first steps toward the stars. And his own people had accidentally created their greatest enemy by trying to destroy them. 4 months after beginning his observation, Velthar watched something that should have been impossible. The humans were not just surviving against superior technology, they were adapting it and making it better. Dr. Jiwan worked in a human laboratory built inside a captured Mordak facility. She was one of many human scientists studying alien technology, but her work was particularly impressive. Velthar focused his sensors on her laboratory. Dr. Jiwan had been examining Mordak energy shields for weeks. These devices created protective barriers that could stop most projectile and energy weapons. The original alien shields were effective but had serious problems. They used too much power and overheated quickly. They also could not protect against certain types of attacks. Dr. Jiwan had completely redesigned them. Her new shields used 30% less power and could run 3 times longer without overheating. She had also found a way to make them stronger against the exact types of weapons humans use most often. How did she do that? Velthar muttered to himself. He ran detailed scans of Dr. Jiwan's modifications. The human scientist had used mathematical principles that Kethmori engineers had never considered. She approached the problem from angles that seemed obvious once he understood them. Why had his people never thought of these improvements? The answer disturbed him. Kethmori scientists followed established procedures. They did what their teachers had taught them, and what their computers calculated as optimal. Innovation was discouraged because it might disrupt social order, but humans seemed to question everything. They looked at alien technology and immediately began thinking of ways to make it better. In another part of the world, Sergeant Su-Jin was defending a critical position with her squad. They had been ordered to hold a bridge that connected 2 human territories. If the Mordak captured it, they could split human forces in half. The alien attack force was enormous: 50 hover tanks, 200 infantry soldiers, and air support. Sergeant Su-Jin had 12 human soldiers and whatever weapons they could carry. Velthar calculated the odds of successful defense. His computer gave the humans a 0.003% chance of survival. Sergeant Su-Jin studied the approaching enemy through her scope. "They will reach the bridge in 20 minutes, she told her squad. Any ideas? One soldier suggested retreating and letting the enemy have the bridge. They could regroup with larger human forces and plan a counterattack later. No, Sergeant Su-Jin said firmly. Too many people depend on this connection. If we lose the bridge, thousands of civilians will be trapped. Another soldier pointed out that 12 people could not possibly stop such a large enemy force. Maybe 12 people cannot stop them. Sergeant Su-Jin agreed. But 12 people plus this bridge might do it. She had studied the bridge's construction and formed a plan that was either brilliant or insane. The bridge was old and built with human engineering techniques. It was strong enough to support normal traffic, but had not been designed for military use. The Mordak hover tanks were much heavier than regular human vehicles. Sergeant Su-Jin's squad planted explosives at key structural points, not enough to destroy the bridge completely, but enough to weaken it at exactly the right moments. When the alien tanks began crossing, the bridge seemed solid. But as more weight was added, the weakened section started to fail. The first few tanks made it across safely. This encouraged more aliens to follow quickly. That was when Sergeant Su-Jin triggered her trap. The explosives went off in sequence, creating a cascade failure that started at the center of the bridge and spread outward. 47 hover tanks fell into the river below. The few alien vehicles that had already crossed were now cut off from their support. Sergeant Su-Jin's squad picked them off with captured Mordak weapons. The alien infantry tried to swim across the river, but they had not expected the strong current. Many were swept away. Those who made it to the human side were exhausted and easy targets. In 30 minutes, a force that should have easily conquered the area was completely destroyed. Velthar stared at his screens in shock. 12 humans had defeated 250 aliens using nothing but intelligence and determination. But the most disturbing part was still to come. After the battle, Sergeant Sujin radioed her commanders to report success. She did not sound excited or proud. She sounded tired and sad. "Bridge defense successful," she said. "Enemy force eliminated." "But we lost the bridge itself. Civilian evacuation will be delayed by 6 hours. She was disappointed that her victory had cost civilian lives, even though she had saved thousands more. This was not how soldiers were supposed to think. Warriors fought to win. They did not worry about side effects or unintended consequences, but humans seemed to care about everything. They fought not just to defeat enemies, but to protect everyone who could not protect themselves. Belthar began reviewing battle reports from across the planet. The pattern was consistent everywhere. Major Inho had captured another alien facility, but instead of using it as a military base, he turned it into a hospital for war refugees. Lieutenant Colonel He Jin won a major victory, then immediately sent supplies to help alien prisoners and human civilians in the battle zone. Captain Taemin defeated a Mordak patrol, then risked his own safety to rescue alien survivors from a crashed vehicle. These humans treated war as something they had to do, not something they wanted to do. They fought to protect rather than to conquer. This was the opposite of every military doctrine Velthar had learned. Successful warriors were supposed to be aggressive and ruthless. They took what they wanted and destroyed what they could not use. But human methods were working better than traditional approaches, Dr. Ji-wan's. Improvements to Mordak technology had been shared with all human forces. Now every human unit had better shields than the aliens who had originally invented them. Sergeant Sujin's defensive tactics were being taught to soldiers across the planet. Humans were learning to turn their infrastructure into weapons. Major Inho's construction equipment assaults had inspired similar attacks on alien positions everywhere. The humans were not just fighting individual battles. They were learning from every encounter and becoming more dangerous with each victory. Belthar realized he was watching something unprecedented in galactic history. A primitive species was not just resisting superior technology. They were mastering it and improving on it faster than their enemies could adapt. The Mordak had stopped making progress months ago. Every new attack failed more completely than the last one, but humans were accelerating. Each day brought new innovations and improvements. Velthar looked at his mission orders. He was supposed to assess whether humans could be a threat to galactic civilization. The answer was becoming terrifyingly clear. Humans were not just a threat. They were potentially the greatest danger the galaxy had ever seen, not because they were violent or aggressive, but because they were creative and adaptable in ways that more advanced species had forgotten how to be. If they survived the current war, they would not stop at defending their own world. They would want to know who had sent the Mordak. They would want to prevent other species from suffering the same attacks. And based on everything Velthar had observed, they would find a way to do exactly that. The hunter was becoming the hunted, and the galaxy was not prepared for what humans might become. 6 months into his observation mission, Velthar discovered something that shattered his understanding of everything he thought he knew about the galaxy. While monitoring Galactic Council communications, he found classified files that revealed the truth about Earth's invasion. The discovery made him feel physically ill. The Council had not just known about the Mordak attack. They had planned every detail of it. Earth was rich in rare minerals needed for advanced technology. The planet also had perfect conditions for several types of valuable agriculture. The Council wanted these resources, but they had a problem. Humans were too numerous to simply destroy. 60 billion people would be noticed if they all disappeared. Other species might ask uncomfortable questions. So the Council devised a clever solution. They would use the Mordak as tools to reduce human population to manageable levels. After the aliens weakened human resistance, Council forces would arrive as peacekeepers to restore order. The surviving humans would be grateful for rescue. They would accept Council authority and work willingly as laborers and servants. But the plan had gone terribly wrong. Humans were supposed to be defeated within 3 months. Instead, they had been winning for half a year. Worse, they were learning to use captured alien technology. Velthar read through frantic Council messages about the situation on Earth. Military advisors were panicking. Human resistance was not just continuing, it was growing stronger. The latest reports, were the most disturbing of all. Colonel Minho had led a massive counterattack against the largest Mordak base on Earth. The alien fortress was supposed to be impregnable, protected by energy barriers and automated defense systems. The humans had destroyed it in 18 hours. Velthar watched recordings of the battle with growing amazement. Colonel Minho had used a strategy that combined everything humans had learned about alien technology. Instead of attacking the base directly, he had targeted its power supply. Human engineers had learned that Mordak energy systems were vulnerable to specific types of electromagnetic interference. While the base's shields flickered from power disruptions, human aircraft dropped modified mining explosives on key targets. The aliens' defensive computers could not track so many small, irregular objects falling at once. But the most impressive part was how Colonel Minho coordinated the final assault. Human soldiers attacked from 12 different directions simultaneously, using captured alien weapons and vehicles. The Mordak had never faced enemies who moved and thought like they did. They were used to fighting other alien species that followed predictable patterns. Humans were completely unpredictable. When blocked by strong defenses, they found new ways around them. When faced with superior weapons, they built better ones. When outnumbered, they used clever tactics to even the odds. The base fell because its defenders could not guess what the humans would do next. After the victory, Colonel Minho made a speech to his soldiers that Velthar recorded and studied many times. "Today we prove something important," the colonel said. "We are not fighting this war because we enjoy violence. We fight because someone decided our people should not be allowed to live in peace." He gestured toward the captured alien base. "These invaders came here with weapons we had never seen. They thought we would be easy to defeat because we had not learned to build energy guns and force fields. But they made a mistake. They forgot that the same intelligence that creates weapons also creates solutions. We learned to use their tools better than they ever did." Colonel Minho's expression became serious. "This war will end soon. We are winning. But when it is over, we will have new questions to answer. Who sent these aliens to attack us? Why did they think they could destroy our world without consequence? I promise you this, we will find those answers. And we will make sure no other species suffers what we have suffered." Velthar felt a chill run down his spine as he listened to the colonel's words. The human was not just talking about surviving the current war. He was planning for what would come after. The council's classified files confirmed that Colonel Minho's concerns were justified. A secret message from Commander Nixara to the Council. Leadership discussed Phase 2 of the Earth operation. If the Mordak could not defeat humans quickly enough, the Council would intervene directly. A massive invasion fleet was already being assembled. Ships from 17 different species, armed with weapons that could destroy entire continents. The message estimated that such an overwhelming force would crush human resistance in less than 1 week. Velthar stared at his screens, finally understanding the scope of what was really happening. He had been sent to observe primitive humans fighting among themselves. Instead, he had witnessed the beginning of something that could change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Humans were not just defending their world against one enemy. They were unknowingly preparing for war against the most powerful alliance in known space. And based on everything he had seen, they might actually have a chance to win. Dr. G1's laboratory had produced improvements to alien technology that surpassed the original designs by generations. Human military leaders like Colonel Minho and Lieutenant Colonel Hai Jin had developed tactics that confused and defeated enemies with superior numbers and weapons. Most importantly, humans fought with a determination that Velthar had never seen before. They protected each other and cared about justice in ways that made them incredibly dangerous to anyone who threatened them. The Council was planning to send hundreds of warships against Earth. They expected an easy victory against a primitive species. With crude technology, they had no idea they were about to face the most adaptive and creative military force the galaxy had ever produced. Velthar looked at his mission orders again. He was supposed to report on human capabilities and recommend whether they posed a threat to galactic civilization. Now he faced an impossible choice. If he reported the truth about human intelligence and determination, the Council would send an even larger invasion force. They would use planet-destroying weapons rather than risk losing conventional battles. Billions of humans would die, and the galaxy would lose something precious that it did not even know existed. But if he filed a false report claiming humans were weak and primitive, they would be caught completely unprepared when the Council fleet arrived. Either choice would result in human extinction. There was only one alternative that might save them. Velthar began accessing Council military databases, using his security codes to gather information about fleet movements and invasion plans. If he was going to betray everything he had been taught to believe, he wanted to make sure it counted. General Sora was addressing her troops when Velthar made his decision. The human commander stood before thousands of soldiers, speaking about their duty to protect not just Earth, but the principles that made their civilization worth saving. "We fight not because we hate our enemies," she said, "but because we love our families, our friends, and our future. We fight so that our children can live in a world where strength is used to protect, not to destroy." Velthar listened to her words and knew what he had to do. For the first time in his life, he was going to choose what was right over what was safe.